rise, join us in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us, especially the people at home. This is our third scheduled out of 4 budget workshops. We'll have the final scheduled one in a few more weeks. Been some interesting developments in the last week or so. The Senate and the Assembly have introduced their one-house bills. They are quite different than the governor's, so hopefully things will be better going forward than we had originally anticipated, but only time will tell. With that in mind, we'll turn it over to Mrs. Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Geller. So good evening. This is our third of 4 work sessions, as Mr. Geller pointed out, and we continue to review our budget, and we have made some adjustments, but in light of the current situation, we anticipate there may be some additional changes due to how the state will fund districts in the upcoming school year. It should be a very exciting 2 weeks. As we have previously discussed, we are faced with a tax levy limit for 2021-22 of 1.60%, and for the 10th year in a row, we have stayed within the tax levy limitation for this school district. Tonight, we focus on the support programs, the buildings and grounds, and security budgets. At this time, I will turn the work session over to Mrs. Pilati, who will provide an update as to the proposed budget, and then Mr. McAlevey and Mr. Bossi will share the specifics about the security and facilities budgets, respectively.
Has it been 10 years for the tax cut yet? Is this the 10th year?
Yeah, the 10th year.
This is the 10th year. Yeah. It is crazy. It feels like it was yesterday. Everybody was screaming about it.
Good evening, everyone. The current proposed budget for the 2021-22 school year is $127.4 million, which represents an increase of 2.42% over the prior year. Our tax levy for 2021-22 is $88.6 million, which represents an increase in the levy of 1.6%. As Mrs. Burns stated, our presentation tonight focuses on school safety and buildings and grounds budgets. Our custodial, maintenance and grounds, and school safety personnel have accomplished a great deal this year. Our buildings are clean to the highest standards demanded by COVID-19, the grounds are well maintained, and a multitude of issues are promptly resolved, as evidenced by the number of work orders that have been closed out already this year. The bond also continues to afford us the opportunity to address many concerns in multiple buildings as they relate to student safety and school security. Mr. McAlevey, our Director of School Safety, is now going to take us through our school safety and security budget.
Good evening. A little taller than Mrs. Pilati here. Good evening. All right, so as we see the school safety accomplishments for the 2020-2021 school year, we have increased the number of surveillance cameras. We have 391 to date. We have added multiple cameras at the high school and transportation garages. The 2 new cameras at the high school guard booths can observe vehicles that enter and exit our campus if we have any suspicious vehicles coming on campus. And these cameras have already been put to good use. We added an additional security vehicle. This vehicle will be added to our 3 to 11:15 in our weekend fleet, based out of Paul J. Ballou, and will be on district-wide patrol throughout the district. We provided each school safety officer with an iPad. School safety iPads have access to our incident reports. The reports allow a school safety officer to take a photo and upload it to the incident report. At that point, it's emailed directly to me. The iPad also has each school safety officer's daily responsibilities and has digital maps of each school to share with the first responders in the event of an emergency. We have installed traffic signs at each elementary school. One-way and do not enter signs were installed in and around our bus circles at our elementary schools. We now have the necessary traffic signs at all schools in the district to provide traffic guidance during our student drop-off and pickups. we installed additional electronic access control points for an entrance at Manatuck Elementary School and the guard booth at the high school. We have installed multiple electronic access control points, which we refer to as the door swipes for IDs to get in and out of the building. At Manatuck, we installed a door swipe at a set of exterior doors by the bus circle where staff and students can utilize. Prior to installing this device, the closest door swipe was around the building. In the event of emergency, it would take a great time to run around to that door to get inside the building. So we installed these door swipes at these 2 doors. Now it's quick access. In the event of emergency, the students and staff can quickly access the door and get inside the building.
Okay, I just have a question. Can I just ask, is that Manatuck was the only elementary school that had that specific problem, that there was no door swipe?
We are continuing to look at these situations as we use the outside grounds more and more.
Okay.
So yes, that is a district-wide thing that we are continuing to
All
look at.
buildings will continue to evaluate that if necessary.
Yep, and that's included into this
Okay.
budget for the
Thank you.
next
And
year.
actually, before Mr. McAlevey arrived, I think it was this year or late last year, we added one to Blue as well. So it's definitely something that's on the radar as we move around.
That's correct.
Thank you.
We installed an LED stop sign at the high school guard booth. Initially, after dark, this guard booth did not provide a lot of light. We were concerned that vehicles are texting and driving and not paying attention. So Buildings and Grounds installed a LED stop sign. And it has LED lights around it, it's flashing, and the hope is for this to catch drivers' attention and slow them down a little bit as they're coming onto the high school property. We outfitted each security office and vehicle with first aid kits. This is basic first aid kits. We purchased the first aid kits for all the vehicles in our fleet, and the kits include basic first aid equipment, and we have them in both security offices at the high school and Paul J. Blue as well.
Do any of the cars have the AEDs?
No, and that's something that we will also look at and look into, training on AEDs and vehicles. And we installed 6 blind spot mirrors at the high school at the request of the high school principal. We had 6 blind spot mirrors installed throughout the intersections and behind stairways in the high school, so that we're able to see locations that we generally can't see, just to help out. Okay, the school safety budget. Overall, the school safety budget is projected to decrease slightly for next school year by 3.7%. The majority of the security budget consists of personnel costs for the director of school safety, the lead security guard at the high school, and staff of approximately 60 part-time school safety officers. We have been fortunate to have a replenishment cycle for our school safety vehicles, but will not be purchasing a vehicle for 2021-2022. This is the main reason for the significant decrease in equipment for next year. For 2021-2022, we are budgeting for the purchase of additional security cameras and additional electronic access door control panels, as we just discussed before, district-wide.
Is the vehicle just not needed at this time?
We had one for this year, so we're in good hands with the vehicle. And
That
then,
completed what we had planned on buying.
correct, and over the next year or two, there are a couple older vehicles that we'll be looking to recycle out.
And Mrs. LaRosa, we shifted those funds to purchase a bus. So that we're taking care of the fleets in both areas.
And still had the decrease of 3.7%?
Well, the money would be seen in the other budget line.
Right, that's right.
And I thought we did this, the purchase of the bus line.
Okay, thank you.
The decrease in supplies is really a reclassification of costs related to our ID badges, which are now being processed by our IT department. These costs were put into the IT budget for the 21-22 school year. IT took over the badging, so all the supplies are going to that. So there's no longer a need for security to have that.
Pictures and everything they're doing?
They're doing everything, yeah. All right, so what's included in the 2021-2022 budget? We have current staff of 60 guards and 1 lead at the high school. Currently, we have 60 school safety officers and 1 lead at the high school. The majority of these officers work in a part-time capacity. Recently, we formed a team of full-time school safety officers for the high school. I felt it was important for the staff and students to build relationships with school safety officers and maintain continuity within the school setting. Increased security camera coverage. The increased security camera coverage, we have come a long way in this area. However, we are always looking to improve. The school safety department works alongside building administration to determine where we should add camera coverage in the future. 2 school safety satellite offices. We currently have a satellite office to the rear of Paul J. Ballou, which is our camera room, and we are in the process of adding one at Udall Middle. The whole idea behind our satellite offices are to break down the security cameras for the district into 3 areas. The North Satellite Office, which will be based out of Udall Middle, will monitor the cameras at Manitowoc, Udall, and Okonock during the school day. The South Satellite Office at Paul J. Ballou will monitor the cameras at Paul J. Ballou, Beach Middle, and Bayview. The high school has a guard booth, and a guard is monitoring all the high school cameras, along with security officers in the high school are also monitoring those cameras at the high school. Instead of having 2 school safety officers monitoring 391 cameras, which is very challenging, we now have 3 school safety officers monitoring individual schools. This will provide adequate safety for staff and students throughout the district.
And so if you could just speak to why Udall, why just the space, you had space there for it? Or?
Yep, there was a need for a north side of town, so out of the 3 north side buildings, Dr. Marquette was fortunate enough to find us a good space, and it's perfect for the cameras in the camera room. So other than that, it's not really, it could have been at Manitowoc or Okonock, but we provided a good space there.
And then question about the guards. There's 60 part-time guards, you had said?
Correct.
But you have 1 key full-time staff that you maintain at the high school?
So technically, every guard is hired as a part-time guard. Some guards work 2 days a week, some guards work 3 days a week. The majority of my staff are retired, so they come and go. As far as the high school, at the elementary schools and middle schools, we have a steady post guard at those schools. At the high school, we had a guard coming in on Monday and Tuesday, we had a guard coming in Wednesday, Thursday. It was broken up throughout the week, and it was different guards, different days. So
out of the 60 guards, how many, what's your average daily guard count during school hours? I don't mean to throw tough.
No, this is fine. At the high school, we have between 7 and 8, and every middle school and elementary school, we have 1 assigned to that building. Then we have a district-wide floater that helps us with traffic at certain schools in the morning and afternoon for drop-off and pickup. And then we have a camera room operator at the rear of Paul J. Ballou in our camera room.
And what about the middle schools? Do they have?
The middle schools are assigned 1 officer per middle school.
So do you find that that is sufficient, that guard?
So with COVID and the traffic congestion that we've had around the district, we do have extra security, part-time security officers that will come in the morning and come in the afternoon for 2 hours to help out with traffic. And if you ask the principals, they've been a great help, especially with the high numbers of drop-offs now with COVID. The majority of kids are not taking buses, and it creates a bit of a problem in the parking lot areas. So it has been a help, and I would definitely, in the future discussions about personnel, like to make, have 2 guards per building would ideally, would be my end goal, but we're working towards that, I think.
I agree with that angle, just so you know.
So,
Go ahead.
And in the buildings like Beach Street, Melinda works, she doesn't report to you, right?
No, so all the security cameras at the visitor windows are not under school safety.
But there's 1 in each building?
There's 1 in each building, and they handle all visitor management. It's a
They
different.
manage the
So at the elementary and middle schools, is it the same guard each day?
That's correct.
Okay,
That is correct. At Manitowoc, we have 1 school officer that works 4 days, and the other officer works Monday, and the other officer works 4 days. So it's those 2 assigned to that building, and there's nobody else that goes to those buildings.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
yep. Additional electronic access door controls. We will continue to look into where we can install additional electronic access door controls, door swipes, to provide quick access for classes utilizing outdoor spaces in the event of emergencies. As a school, professional development. As a school safety department, we're always looking for ways to improve and make sure we are properly trained. I plan on providing the school safety staff with active shooter training annually, New York State annual security guard training, and various other trainings, such as maybe AED training and first aid training in the future, something that we're looking into right now. School safety uniforms.
Sorry.
Yep.
So back up for a second, please.
Sure.
So you said all the cars now have first aid kits, and are they currently trained in how to use what's in there?
When I say first aid kits, it's your basic first aid kit where we might have at a sporting event. Nothing that requires any type of license, paramedic or EMS. But it is something that I am visiting, and I do think it's important for all of our school safety officers to be trained in first aid and first response. So we are exploring that right now. Yes, sir.
I just had a question about, we're looked into Suffolk County Police, right, for cameras?
Yes, we are.
Is that the whole system, or is it?
The whole system, and they actually do checks every 24 hours. They will look at our cameras to review the cameras, yes.
Is it just like a switch, is it that?
Yeah, they have it at the 3rd precinct, and they have access to the cameras, correct. Yes.
Sean, is your staff, you have a lot of retired NYPD or police officers?
I would say we're probably 60-40
So there is-
retired law
So
enforcement.
they would have prior knowledge?
Yes, absolutely. And the majority of these folks do already. But now we got the job to make them current.
Correct.
So we will visit that annually or every 2 years or
And
so.
all that training is, renewable.
Correct. Yep. All right. School safety uniforms. I believe as school safety officers, we should always strive to be professional. Having the same uniform for all members of the school safety staff demonstrates unity and professionalism. We will continue to make sure all of our school safety officers are provided with uniforms, something that I take pride in coming from law enforcement. I think everybody should dress professional and everybody look the same and look as a team, and it's very important to me. So it's a khaki pants, West Side School Safety, navy blue shirt, or a fleece or a jacket. Yep, that's what we have so far. All right, at this point, I would like to turn it over to Director of Buildings and Grounds, Mr. James Boston.
Thank you, Ms. McAleese.
Thank you.
You're next. You're in the hot seat.
Yeah, just because we were nice to Mr. McAleese.
Still bringing me in.
The microphone's almost at my level, it's a little too low for, I'm close.
Appreciate that.
You got a lot of audience questions. Mr. Rossi, before you begin, and we jump ugly with you, I do want to thank you for all the hard work that you and your staff have done this year in crazy times, keeping those buildings clean, keeping the students and the staff safe. I think, it's been tremendous. Thank you.
I appreciate
And
that.
most people do not realize the scope of what you have to do.
I would say that's true for what I do, but also for what most people in the schools do. It's hard to understand until you're in their shoes.
Absolutely.
And it's funny, I remember right before COVID came around, I remember I was talking to Mrs. Burns about how every year has been so crazy. The bond work, it's like, oh, something's always around the corner. And sure enough,
So this is your fault.
yeah, basically it's my fault. I jinxed us.
It's a Bossie virus.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to just start out with reminding you all, I think you already know this, that I can't share all the things that we've accomplished in our department on the slides and in our discussion, but I'll go through a few of the examples of things we've done this year. So I have a few slides for that.
Mr. Bossi gave us 15 slides, but we cut that.
Cut you down.
I cut it down from 30 to 15, and then, so, it's all right. I know you missed those days, Steve, when we had the long, long meetings.
Oh, yeah.
So the first one was that we completed district-wide LED light replacements in the, what's the slide there? In the parking lots, buildings, and roofs. This is repetitive from last year and the year before. We're just moving through the district, updating every light we can to start saving money, provide better and safer lighting. We facilitated the installation of the Huddle game cameras in high school. They were installed. It was a very technical installation with network and mechanical install on the walls, with lifts and so forth. And our own maintenance crew handled that, which is a good thing. We could have hired outside for that, would have been a bigger cost.
Those cameras are great.
Yeah, everyone seems to love them. We added new epoxy floors in the auto shop, and we also painted all the walls and cleaned some plumbing and electrical up in that room. We also installed in that room a welding station section with 6 or 7 welding stations with some elaborate electrical outlets and supplies in there for each of those circuits for the 2 types of welders per station, plus service outlets. That was all handled in-house as well, with some help from Emerald Electric, our electrical contractor.
Just perspective, how many students are in the auto shop program? Any idea?
I don't know, about 24 maybe total.
I would have to get back to you on exact numbers.
But we've added like the advanced auto class where previously only 2 or 3 kids were allowed to be in the advanced class every year and they mentored the other students. And now we run our own section of advanced. And I think there's 2 sections of them, so it definitely grew.
I listed that we added custom Lexan shields. That was the work to do all the main offices and special areas, kitchens, service locations, counselor rooms, just custom. Our carpenters cut these out, hung them from ceilings, and mounted them on desks. And there were well over 100 of those everywhere. So that was a bit challenging to get exactly what would help us in September and until now. We also added air conditioning shields that directed the airflow up. That was back in September when everyone was worried about whether we can run air conditioning or not, and we needed it. So we redirected the airflow. We also built a high school social workers office that was a former storage room. Before that was a former bathroom and shower area. We made it into a true office for the kids to go for social workers. It's excellent. Next page. We remodeled 2 storage rooms in the high school for other purposes, cleaned them up and painted those. We completed various district-wide painting projects, and that means in addition to just painting classrooms or hallways or main offices, and things like gyms and cafeterias and some other outdoor work, molding, specialty work. It's been good to have the painters that we have to maintain the district. We have multiple bond projects. I won't go into those details. I think you know all those already, but we got all that work done as well. We installed new carpeting in the high school and Beach Street and some main office and counseling areas. We rebuilt an RPZ, which is a reduced pressure valve, to prevent the water from flowing back into the residential streets or services from the school. That was something we handled in-house again with our plumber. We've done a few of them every year. We renovated the transportation building office, which was a really decrepit, old-looking room that they had an office in. Now it looks upscale. It looks nice. It's carpeting, it's painted, new furniture. We replaced multiple boiler sections in the high school and at Udall Road on the boilers that some of you were here when we installed the new one back in 2010 or so. But we have 20 or more boilers, so we're going to have a couple of cracked sections every few years, so we had them fixed. And we also updated classrooms to meet COVID needs with furniture changes, some other logistical setups in the different types of classrooms.
Mr. Muncy, what do you see as the life expectancy of all those boilers? Because when you said 2010, I'm like, was it that long ago?
Yeah, well, the life expectancy was around 18 to 20 years. And it's not based on hours of use, it's more based on heating and expansion and contraction. So as they're shut down and used on and off, they can fail. And so you can't predict them. Sometimes they fail at 10 years, sometimes they fail at 40 years. It's very hard to estimate them all. That's why there's also multiple boilers in every school, because it's understood that you want 200%. So if one fails, you can still heat the building. We constructed a new copier room at Bayview in an area that would help with COVID and also ventilation and also access. We installed custom sliding storage furniture in high school for the music wing. That's for all the sheet music and other things like specialty instrument shelving that held certain types of instruments. We cut and replaced multiple deteriorated pipes in the crawl spaces. We replaced multiple steam coils in the high school, which are generally overhead units that are very heavy. They get cut out, custom made, custom installed, and while that's being done, the staff has to be provided with additional temporary heat, things like that. We added and repaired various electrical circuits district-wide, both in-house with our maintenance supervisor, who's an electrician as well as outside contractors. We repaired fencing and gates district-wide, as we always do, and we moved hundreds, if not thousands, of furniture items from all the buildings to Macera and storage or other rented building locations, but mainly Macera, to allow for the open classrooms. We went through after the fact and tried to figure out how much stuff we moved back from September on, And the amount of things that came out of the classrooms and throughout the buildings, moved by custodians, packed up with help from all the teachers, and then eventually transported with grounds. It was a monumental task, and I'm just so glad now you walk in these classrooms, they kind of look like they should have always, nice and neat.
I was just gonna say, it's like when you declutter your house, right? And you're like, I don't need that stuff at all.
Yeah.
Just keep it moving to the curb.
Do you have a box truck?
We have 2 box trucks and then open trailers and open trucks. And most of it was in box trucks, some of it was in a rack truck so you could stack things up. But keep in mind, it wasn't like we were moving boxes. It's chairs and tables and very, very difficult to transport items. A lot of them were furniture items where the boxes or files were filled with items that the drawers would open, and it was not easy. We have some patient guys that are moving all this stuff.
The room's not easier to clean without all of that clutter.
It is a bit, and we tend to remind them of that when they're cleaning more shields and doing additional COVID work and all this stuff. So they've saved a little bit of time with that, and they pick up more time doing other things. Oops. The next slide. The non-recurring items, these are some examples of things that are in the budget that don't repeat every year. We're going to repair the pavement at Manitowoc, with some asphalt issues there from when the gas line was installed years ago and settled, and some concrete curb issues and sidewalk. There's also a maintenance van that we're going to replace that we're currently driving an old school bus, one of the main buses. We have window blinds in all the non-structural areas that were not included with the bond work because it wasn't aidable as a non-structural area. And we also have the high school is a cafe serving refrigerator for the students as they walk through. We did one side a few years ago. The other side needs to get done now, so we'll get that done as well. For the capital reserve, I wanted to mention a few things about the projects that we plan to undertake if the the vote is passed for the capital reserve. District-wide, we're going to be replacing more water fountains in every building with the bottle filling stations. Manitowoc and Okonock will install the air conditioner mini splits for those main offices to match other buildings. High school will replace the fencing that is beat up right now and rotten. We talked about that a bit with a new campus-style fencing. The high school in Bayview.
Is that an actual estimate, $300,000?
That's the estimate, but it provides for a range of options that could include wrought iron, masonry piers, and other things. So when we get to the final estimate for the final design, we'll know what the real number is. At the high school in Bayview, we plan to renovate 4 more bathrooms. Bayview, we have asphalt paving in the staff parking lot in the rear, which is old and pretty beat up at this point, and also the kindergarten areas. High school, we have equipment in the auditorium. An equipment item would be the stage curtains to replace. And finally, the mechanical kitchen interior walk-in freezer and refrigerator is original to the building, and the mechanicals in there, and the doors, and the hinges, and the hasps, nothing seems to work well. It cools, but by the skin of our teeth. So we're going to try to replace those and upgrade them. A couple comments about that is it's important to note that upon the completion of these projects, any unspent funds would be returned to the capital reserve fund. So like we said a moment ago, these are estimates. If the actual costs fall lower than that money goes back to the capital reserve. Also keep in mind, it's very important that people realize that these projects are being done at no additional cost to taxpayers. These funds are already in the reserve, not part of the budget that we're voting on, and therefore they're specifically for capital improvements like these, and just like what we could do each year in the future.
And is this how they have to be listed on the actual vote committee? Like the details or the pricing?
We do have to put, I
Just
have
like
this proposition already from the attorney that I was reviewing, but yes, we are required to put not to exceed authorization amount.
But line list one.
Not that much detail, but we do list the projects.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, unless there's any other questions.
I do have questions. I wanted to ask you about air conditioning in terms of, the classroom spaces. I see that, you have it on there to upgrade in the main office and the nurse's office, which is going to match what we've done already. We've recently, in the past, right, Rich had discussion about air conditioning. I don't feel like it was never really resolved, or we never really came to any kind of consensus on what a project like that would look like, entail, how we could work it into our budget, if we can work it into the budget. What is your sense of looking at that in the future, maybe once the bonds work is complete?
Well, I recall that we did have a pretty detailed conversation with our architect who threw some estimates at us. Those estimates were shockingly high for adding electrical capacity to handle the air conditioning, then installing it. At the end, the only possible solution that was within reach of a budget, and it was still beyond what we could afford with our current bond budget, was to put window units in throughout the district. And the consensus, I think, at the time in that room was that that's not a look we'd like to see along the front of every school building. So we talked to the architect about that, and we basically tabled the idea that we would put district-wide air conditioning in every single room with the current bond. So with the understanding that at a future year, this could be considered again. I will say that the generator plan for Beach Middle School and district office that you already know is going to be happening this summer and fall. They put enough capacity on the generator that if air conditioning was added to this building, it would support most of that in the instructional rooms.
So with one of the guidelines of COVID being air quality, right? And also the American Rescue Plan earmarking funds for infrastructure in school buildings, would that be a project that we may be able to look at to accomplish sooner rather than later through that funding that is supposed to be coming our way, and in light of the fact that it is a coronavirus issue, or air quality is an issue that we can address?
Yeah, I realize that air quality and filtration is somewhat related to air conditioning, in that the units that provide that also filter it. But I would not, I'm not aware of what funds might be available for air conditioning. I know the cost is high, but if our goal was to provide the
Yeah,
COVID.
I don't expect you to have an answer, but I think that it's something that, we need to investigate a little bit
Sure.
further as that plan becomes really established and that money goes on.
Yeah, and I think that if that money does become available to school districts, we can look at that. We can certainly look at the use of our capital reserve in the future as well. One of the things as it relates to COVID, though, is that when we are talking about air filtration systems through air conditioners, they are pretty sophisticated. So we're talking about the upper end cost, which I think was around 17 million, if I remember correctly at the time.
Yes.
So it's a pretty steep ticket, but it's certainly something, as Tabasi pointed out, when the generators were put in or being put in here in Beach, it's always looking toward the future. What could it sustain going forward? So it's probably something that we could look at a long-term, plan in that regard.
Okay.
And does the solar project help at all in cost if we did put air conditioning?
Well, the solar project is meant to offset the electric bill, but because of the way solar produces power at a very steady, low rate, I don't think it would make much difference for helping with air conditioning load, because that's a spike or
Not
peak.
even low, just
Yeah.
expense.
But with expense, yeah, it would definitely help. But the air conditioning cost would make a significant increase from whatever we're paying at the time.
But again, the 17 million is upfront costs. It's not
Right.
factoring in the recurring energy costs.
That's true. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm sorry, on your estimates for energy costs and gas going forward, vehicle fuel, with the increased price of gas that we're experiencing right now. Did you estimate high enough, taking that into consideration?
We estimated I think for gasoline, we estimated about 25% increase. What we're seeing now is a bit more than that. But there's also not just an increase, we also put, I think I put 10% additional for change of use as we change what our practices are. I was just thinking actually when the security presentation was going on, if we're adding more vehicles and there's more driving being done, there would be an increase in that fuel cost. Compared to electric and natural gas, though, I would say it's fairly insignificant. We might be talking about another 5,000, maybe 10. So when I think about the electric costs and the electric savings with PV, as well as the natural gas, those numbers are in the hundreds of thousands. I think that when you blend everything together, I think we're going to be in an okay position with the estimates we've made, accounting for rate increases for all of it, or weather conditions. So I think we're okay.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions?
Yeah, good. Do we ever,
Thank
do we ever, do we ever play in the futures markets for energy, like oil or gas? You know, pre-buy? Have you ever looked at anything like that?
No, that's not something we looked at. I did that one time about 15 years ago. We were looking at oil purchasing.
Right.
But one issue that came up was we couldn't go into an agreement for the following year because the budget year was that year.
Okay.
So, but I wouldn't recommend we go too far into that now because we do get very good pricing as a school district. So, but it's not a bad idea for the future, you're right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Boswell.
Okay, so our next budget work session, our last budget workshop, will be held on April 13th. And it's important to point out at that point, the executive budget hopefully will be adopted, as it should be by April 1st. So we'll have all final numbers and final budget numbers by then. By April 19th, all nominating petitions for the board trustee seats must be submitted to district office. The deadline for that is April 19th by 5 p.m. Our budget adoption will be on April 20th here at the Beach Street Auditorium. And our public budget hearing will be held on May 6th. And of course, May 18th is our budget vote and trustee election at the high school gymnasium from 7 to 9. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining us at home. Have a good evening, be safe and be well.